Welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
So for those who do not know, explain what Independent Journal Review, aka IJR, aka IJ Review is.
So Independent Journal Review, for those of you that do not know, is a news site based out of Washington, D.C. We get over 30 million Americans a month that come to our site. And we're really focused on helping people.
Is that ComScore or internal analytics?
That's a mixture of, some months ComScore will have us up to 25, some months 20. It just depends month to month.
So it's a pretty big.
It's pretty big, yeah, pretty big difference. We'll have big stories. We get op-eds from newsmakers, and occasionally those will really take off. So this election cycle obviously has been an interesting one. We've seen a lot of traffic. People can't get enough clicking on the stories of the circus that is the 2016 campaign. So that's played into our favor in a lot of ways, but some of it I think people are kind of growing weary of. So
what year did you found?
So 2012, I founded
2012.
Independent Journal Review, and the idea at the time was that news distribution was changing, and this all is common sense today. Every publisher in the room recognizes that Facebook, Twitter, email, they're important platforms, as important, if not more important, than the homepage of your website. And in my role, I was the digital director for a political committee and was helping senators communicate more effectively online. Not the easiest job in the world for some of these guys, but recognize that, okay, there's these platforms where there's actually more news being distributed, clicked on, shared on these platforms versus the traditional sites that these guys were focused on, the traditional papers. Sure. And so I took money out of my own back pocket and invested in building audiences. I hired a friend from back home and took a bet on the future of news distribution, which was social platforms. And today we actually have a holding company that I started where we have an agency, we have Independent Journal Review, we have another site. And
what's the other site?
The other site's Lift Bump, which is sort of feel-good, inspirational content geared towards a similar audience.
Okay. So what opportunity, I mean, you said the distribution, but we've talked a lot about building brands and differentiated brands. What was the opportunity you saw in an extremely crowded area? There's traditional DC publications, Hill, Roll Call, there's Politico, obviously, is a giant force.
Yeah, I think
all the major papers cover it. I could keep going on.
Sure. No, I think there's a big part of America that wanted to have their news presented differently. What we focus on is helping people experience the news. So instead of really just kind of telling a story from the press gallery's perspective, we're listening to our audience, we're showing them versus telling them what's happening, and they've reacted well to that. They're sharing our content, they're consuming it, and we're focused on an audience that's larger than just inside the Beltway. So we're taking kind of inside.
That means conservative, right?
I think it's broader than that. It's Americans that are independent-minded, that think about the individual versus institutions. They don't really trust any institution. They don't trust traditional news brands. They don't trust political parties. They trust their friends, neighbors, relatives. They're suburban. They're rural. So it's a large. I mean,
so how would you describe the point of view then?
Sure. I think our point of view I think it's experiencing the news more than anything else. We're trying to help people go there. So one example, we had Senator Lindsey Graham. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Donald Trump gave out his number on national television. And in that moment, he had a couple different ideas, a couple different things he could do to react. Traditionally, you'd go on CNN and talk about how terrible that was, how rude, how unprofessional. You could send out a press release. But what we did was we pitched them on doing something different, helping people experience what that was like to have your cell phone given out on national television. He literally was getting phone calls all night while he was, his phone was just blowing up nonstop, text messages. And so what he did, he actually had a flip phone, which is kind of wild to think the United States Senator carries a flip phone. He took it by our office. He came by our office that morning, and within 2 hours, we had cut a video that, if you follow the election cycle, you probably have seen over 50 million views on that video across traditional media and online views. But we had him destroy his flip phone. And that, for him, was his way of showing people versus telling people what that felt like. So
and you distributed that on Vine, on Facebook, on Instagram?
All different platforms.
Okay.
So we took little bits of that and turned it into 6-second Vines. Every debate, we're creating Vines. I think we've really embraced that platform. It's a great way to build our brand inside the Beltway, to do something different. and add value to the process.
So what were the numbers from that video in particular?
So across, we use a tool called IQ Media, which actually allows us to track not just digital views, but traditional media views. We're measuring the brand value of a mention on television or a mention on a print publication. And I believe that one had around 60 million, 55, 60 million views across television, print, digital.
Oh, that's interesting. So let's talk about Facebook. Facebook is the majority of your traffic, right?
It's, yeah, the majority.
But
over 50%.
Over 50%, but
Yeah.
under 80%. Because I mean, there's some publishers that have grown this quickly that
Yeah, I
their
mean, I don't
Facebook
think you can,
numbers are.
I don't think any publisher that, we actually joked about it backstage, if you say you're majority mobile, it's usually majority Facebook.
Right.
And
Anyone who
you can't
says
grow,
that they're 80% mobile, they're pretty much going to be 75 to 80% Facebook, right?
yeah, and you can't grow at the rate we did unless we embraced a new platform. I mean, there's no way I could
So
have.
how dangerous is it though now that you're building
extremely,
a,
yeah. I mean, I
a
think
real brand?
I think that there's benefits to the way that Facebook's embraced publishers with instant articles, with the ability to kind of partner with the publisher and create a win-win situation versus just simply driving traffic off their site. But it's certainly a concern. It's, I'm sure, what every publisher that is social focused thinks about. And what we've really embraced and we've tried to do is, through the agency, we're looking at newsmakers and we're talking to newsmakers about building their brands within our ecosystem. So helping them do the things that they're not good at, whether that's generating content, advertising optimization, programmatic advertising.
So you're turning your expertise in building this audience and you're basically saying, instead of an adjacency pitch, you're saying it's an agency pitch.
That's part of what we're doing. Yeah, I think we've built the expertise on these things that are really hard that a lot of journalists don't know well, that a lot of newsmakers don't do well. But these guys have a real following. They have passionate followers, they have passionate fans that are eventually, our belief, they're going to be willing to pay for content. I think that is the next.
That your visitors will pay for
content from newsmakers, journalists that they care about, that they follow, that they trust.
But how realistic is that when you're getting flyby traffic from Facebook that people would take out a credit card?
Yeah, I don't think all the traffic, but if you have 30 million people, even 1% of that can make a real impact. And that's what we've started to do, segmenting out our audiences, looking at things like recency, frequency, who are the visitors that are most likely to engage with a certain newsmaker that we could put in front of them. And you're seeing this now across tons of industries. I think TheStreet.com is a great example where you see Jim Cramer has created a model around his brand. And that's in the financial space.
So when you're looking at monetization down the road and a sustainable business model, subscriptions are a big part of that, of a diversified business model.
I think for any publisher that wants to employ a large newsroom, I don't believe that digital advertising as it exists today can support that. I think you're seeing publishers that do a lot of different things around e-commerce. They're creating different adjacent businesses that support their journalism. I think it'll be interesting to see who can figure out that the value of information is real and people are willing to pay for it.
So does this look like the Politico model where they go super
I
deep
think what
in
they did
energy
is great. I think what they've done in the niche kind of industry-focused space is genius, and they've built a massive team around their brand of journalism, and people are paying real money, $5,000 a year, to have access to their industry-specific content. And you're seeing really smart news organizations like Atlantic Media that are turning National Journal entirely into a subscription service. You're seeing across the board now a shift towards paid subscription models for.
So when should we expect to see this subscription model?
For
you.
For us?
Yeah.
Well, I think for us, we have a long way to go. We have to really continue to build our brand. We're productizing some of our biggest talents. So we have a product called Political Edit that we've put out where we have our White House correspondent. We have Hunter Schwartz, who was previously at the Washington Post, someone at BuzzFeed, and the three of them are creating kind of a daily newsletter and event series around their brands. And we've seen some real success with that early.
Okay. So what ends up being the biggest struggle for you right now when it comes to monetizing this audience that's growing very quickly?
I think it's diversification is the biggest challenge for an upstart publisher. But from the get-go, we've really focused on building a business that has multiple facets to it. So we have over 100 people in the company, and there's a large section of those that are agency-focused. There's a large section that are independent journal-focused. We have our other sites. And we're developing applications that are industry-focused that can solve different problems within our industry. So we're excited about where we're at. We've put the hard work in to diversify, but we have a long way to go, especially with the dependence on other platforms.
Yeah, so how do you end up converting all that Facebook traffic into a more direct connection? I mean, is email important to you?
Yeah, I think you have to move people down the funnel. I think you have to start out, the Facebook traffic is really the most passive. That's going to be tough. The people that read an article maybe once a month or see a shared article twice a month, they're going to be people that are going to be really tough to have opt into an email list or to have become paying subscribers. So you have to break down and segment your audience. Look for the people that are coming that maybe represent 5% of your uniques, but 50% of your page views.
Right.
That's the place to really start when you're building out these next kind of level continuity programs. And for us, we think building around, especially the newsmakers and some of the brand names that we have, will be the easiest transition. Someone that really, really enjoys one newsmaker or another, or wants to see more of their content in particular. I think as these guys, I mean, if you're President Obama, right, and you're going to leave office, he has the ability to create a media company that could compete with anyone overnight. And I don't think the model will be writing books and simply writing books and getting a television contract and doing speaking gigs. I think there'll be another leg on the stool that'll be, your digital assets. How do you monetize your digital assets? How do you turn your access, your information into an exclusive offering that people pay for?
Yeah. And he's leaving office with like a 90 million email list. So that helps. Final thing, and then I want to open it up to see if anyone has any questions. The Trump phenomenon. Have you seen any sort of decline in performance on Trump stories?
So there's definitely been a little bit of a tail off. I think that at the outset, people were just so surprised that some of these things were happening in a presidential campaign. And now I think the appeal of that has worn off a bit.
It's
and
like a new
it's hard
ad
to top,
tactic.
It's hard to kind of top that moment.
It's like a new ad tactic. The performance always goes in one direction, down. Any questions for Alex? Yeah, we've got a microphone. Jerry's got it.
Cool. Thanks very much. Good presentation. Really interesting what you said about Obama, right? And leaving office and potentially using digital media as a monetization tool and not just as a promotional tool. Are there examples of that now in global politics where you're seeing leaders actually drive revenue and drive business value out of social media? Is there sort of a case study around that, or is that just something that you're predicting going forward, which makes a lot of sense?
Yeah, so there's a few kind of examples of people that have done it in a small way, but they haven't really professionalized it. I think if you look at Speaker Gingrich, he built a media company around his brand, and he did everything from television to children's books. He had, I think, an event series where you could meet with him and learn about his ideas. You'd come like once a quarter or I think twice a year. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he was kind of dabbling in this space. I think all these guys really think about themselves post-campaign as a media company, as a newsmaker that provides information, and they frankly have reach that sometimes trumps anything else out there. I mean, President Obama, if he wanted to start his own media company, there's not a publication in America that can compete with his reach. I don't think at the outset, especially in politics, news, current events. I mean, his email list is what, 20, 30 million people? He's got 20, 30 million Facebook fans. And those are people that engage with his content, that know and like his brand. And so I think you'll start to see this evolution, and that's really where we're positioning ourselves with the agency, with what our expertise are around not just monetizing programmatically and through native, but I think beyond that with information products and subscriptions.
Cool. Alex, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Cool. Right now we're going to